All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to touch on a hot topic, and that is construction costs. And I've got a way that I think can help you out a little bit. I want you to check it out. I've got Vincent Albanese. He's with Cobod 3D Printing. They're one of the leaders in 3D printing for commercial and residential real estate in the United States. Vincent, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me on, Joe. Super excited to be a part of it.
We've seen construction costs. They're through the roof. This is why I hunted you down. I wanted to find somebody because, we're always looking for alternatives for our viewers. What else can they be looking at? And a lot of them hadn't thought about 3D printing, and especially for commercial real estate. They've seen it for residential, but they've not seen it for commercials. Can you walk us through the evolution where we're at right now with 3D printing for commercial real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to start off, I could kind of start a little bit about my journey and how I kind of got into it. So construction costs was one of the major drivers for me kind of going into the industry. I was basically right out of college. Just like any young person, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and kind of went into the real estate hole. And, being 23, 24 out of college, just looking at real estate investment, you realize how expensive things got, especially during COVID. So we're talking 2021, 2022, I started looking at this. And, it wasn't even from an investment side, but I thought about it just from a practical side. What is real estate is going to be like in the next 10 years? So am I going to be paying 1,200? Am I going to be paying $1 million for a 1,200 square foot apartment, which was my fear. So with my background, I did Purdue engineering. So I kind of just went down the rabbit hole. And honestly, I searched cool, interesting technologies in construction on YouTube, and 3D printing kind of came up. That's where I found Cobod. Next thing you know, I was actually moving to Denmark, lived in Denmark for 6 months, and then helped start the US office here in Miami. So that was my progression to the industry itself. And so when I joined the company, it was 2020 so we were really trying to take off the industry, that kind of stuff. 2021, we had a massive year. We sold 25 printers, so we tripled the company. And then 2022 is kind of the year of the projects. So this year, we've been able to see projects on all 6 continents, everything from a 10,000 square foot horse barn to doing, housing communities in Africa and California for restoration, all the way to like disaster restoration. So we have a printer in Turkey and then doing Ukrainian schools. So that's kind of, where we're at for the year of the projects. And then this year has been great because we finally got to see some financial numbers per se, what it costs from residential. But then we also got to explore more to say, hey, how can we go commercially bigger? How can we do data centers? How can we do warehouses, distribution centers, topics along those lines?
Yeah, I would think there's going to be a real opportunity here. I just think that, I don't know. Are you guys, I thought you'd have a big savings on materials. I think, is it mostly time savings? So labor you're saving? Where's the big savings in 3D printing?
Yeah, so there's a couple big savings. So the first one is definitely labor for the most part, but it also kind of depends because, when you look at automation, you do have to hire some like engineers as well too. So you do have to look at, hey, what is the software engineer? What does mechanical engineer, kind of come into? So that does tie into the labor aspect a little bit. The materials, using less materials is a huge one. So we're talking, we have tried to decrease waste on a construction site from typically using 50% waste. Typical construction site has 50% waste. Our sites only have 3% waste because we're mixing small quantities on site. And I could touch upon that a little bit more. But the biggest thing we've seen in cost, which is really hard to put a number around, is time. Time is money. So we've seen some of our projects increase, 50%. And I could give an example. So we did a 3-story, 4,000 square foot villa in Saudi Arabia. To finish that project completely, we're talking windows, doors, and everything, would have took them 7 months. With our 3D printer, they did everything in 3 months. And that was completed. So you saved 4 months. Those 4 months are kind of hard to determine, what is that value is. So that's like the one thing we could like confidently say. Going back to the material thing, we are going to save more material as the industry progresses. One thing that is kind of hindering it is regulations. So right now, when you build a 3D printed home, you're basically building a traditional concrete home for the most part. So once the more standards get approved, you can optimize the design. Once you optimize the design, will be less material, which will be less money efficiently. All the way to, hey, can we take reinforcement out of the equation? use things like steel fibers into the mix, and reinforcement is about a third of the cost. So can we take some reinforcement out of the equation as well too? So those are kind of like the main three drivers: the labor, the material, and then the time.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. The can you walk us through the process? So you find your lot, you get an architect, you draw it out. What do we go from there? Yeah, I mean, you have to have a machine that you brought in. How long does it take? They contact you. How long? And I've got the architectural drawings done. I'm ready to go. You guys come out for the foundation right away. How long until you're doing construction, building the property?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we could start just like the basics and go with, the
Yeah.
foundation. So let's just say, for example, the foundation is poured traditionally on this one. So after that, what you're going to do, you're going to take the printer and then you're going to set it up on site. Typically, you can set it up on a couple ways. We use concrete feet to set up the printer, but sometimes people just make the foundation a little bit bigger and they attach the printer straight to the foundation.
Gotcha. Okay.
When setting up the printer, you're going to take our team, an experienced team could tear a printer up in 6 hours. The first time you're going to do it might take you 2 to 3 days just to get learning about it. But once you get an experienced team, you're talking takedown, put up is around 6 hours. So it's pretty quickly to put the machine up. And then once you got it going, you're going to test it and run it. The way our machine works from a software side of things is you're going to use any normal CAD program. So whether you're using softwares like Revit, AutoCAD, Rhino, you're going to be able to take that 3D model, input it into our slicer. Our slicer is going to create what we call G code. The G code is what communicates to the machine. So for the most part, you don't have to do any really hard coding for the machine. It just comes from design. So once the architect has a design, they take their 3D model and they put it into our slicer, and then that tells what the machine is going to do. From there, that's kind of the machine part. Then you got to look at the material side of things. So you got to look at making sure you have the concrete mix is right. There's a lot of things that go into the material scientists. Concrete, when first starting out, learning your material is going to be the first challenge of it because concrete's very volatile. It could be 1% humidity in the morning, and then in the afternoon it's 90% humidity. So that mix is going to change throughout the day. So that's where you kind of really have to narrow down into the morning what your mix is going to look like, what's the temperature going to look like for the day, and then prep through there. Then from there we have our own interface on the printer, and then you kind of hit start. For the most part, the printer does most of the work. For the 4 people operating the machine, they're just making sure the extrusion is right. So making sure the material coming out of the nozzle is good and can be laid. And then they're just making sure that the machine just doesn't run into any problems.
That sounds simple.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I know that's not, because there's got to be some limitations, and I can the temperature being one of them. What other limit? I suppose heat, cold. Are you guys doing construction during the winter?
Yeah, so we've tackled the heat. We printed in 110 degrees Fahrenheit, but the cold is the challenge. So what our customers are doing, we have customers up in Canada. So what they'll do in the winter is they'll bring their printer indoors, and they might do some R&D. Yeah, they might do some R&D. They might do some prefabrication for some design, and then they'll take it out. But when it comes to winter, we're looking at, can we get some big blow up tent? Our printers are fairly large, so you need a big tent, and then can you heat it? Because with the cold, it's not only do you have to worry about the material freezing, but you have to worry about the electronics in the machine freezing too. So that's where the cold really starts to come into play.
How long does it take your average exterior wall to dry? Is it a couple days?
Yeah, no, it's pretty quick. So when you look at layer, our layer time is typically 10 to 15 minutes. What that means from point A to point B, it needs to be around 10 minutes. So once that second layer comes about, within 10 minutes, that bottom layer is starting to cure. So I could tell you in 2 hours, you're not going to be able to kick it over. If you try to kick it, you would probably break your foot. But yeah, and then the concrete typically takes, a day to fully cure. And then concrete takes 28 days to fully cure is the rule of thumb.
I want to go back. You brought up architect. Now, do you need a specialty architect, or can any architect do the drawings for these?
Yeah, so for the For the most part, most architects are adaptable to it. We might teach them how to design a little bit differently than they're used to. One of the big things is making sure you have the right center line when printing. So there's some adjustments you need to make that architects aren't used to. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty adaptable, and they're used to using these softwares like Revit and Rhino. It's
Sure.
just more of converting to it. But it's nice because the entire ecosystem is kind of changing. Like universities are making it more appealing to it, and they're making it more noticeable that people can design for 3D concrete printing and things along those lines. So the industry and then the students are definitely catching up to it.
Yeah. Now, so the walls are concrete. Are the interior walls concrete as well?
Yep. So
Everything's concrete throughout.
yep,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, so when you look at how much can we 3D print, we're going to talk around 50 to maybe 55%. So we could print the top foundation, we could print the exterior, interior walls, and then we could 3D print the roof. So those are, the topics we've explored so far. But, if you want to take one, bird's eye view too, from a cobot perspective, we're looking to expand, our robotic solution. So not just 3D printing, but construction robotics in general. So can we throw a robotic arm to do automated painting or plastering as well too? So we're trying to add other tools to the system.
Okay. What's the largest property you guys have, or commercial property you've 3D printed?
So that was a 10,000 square foot barn up in Florida.
Okay.
So the barn cost around $3 million to build. So you're talking roughly $300 a square foot. And this is a fairly high end barn. You're talking, Kentucky Derby style.
Yeah, you said a 10,000 square foot horse barn. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the largest footprint to build that we have. There's certain things in the works right now that we can't discuss, but yeah, I mean, there's certain projects out there that you're talking, 50 to 60 square feet of commercial buildings in progress right now.
Okay. How high can you guys go?
Yeah, so the highest we have gone is 33 feet. That was the building in Saudi Arabia that I mentioned. But we do have a printer that we developed for investors, General Electric. We call it the BOD XL for being extra large per se. But that printer could go up to 80 feet in height. We haven't gone up in the 80 feet. I believe the largest 3D printed structure in the world is 33 feet in Saudi Arabia. But we have a printer that can go up to 80 feet in height.
Man, that would be. How long would it take to build something that? I mean, about a year.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because there's a lot of unknowns, especially when it comes to the engineering. So we could, the engineers could predict what 3 stories look like, but once you get to 4 stories, that's kind of where a lot of universities, such as MIT and those type of people are doing study in what does it look like over 3 stories. And like for me, can I say we can go do 6 stories? To be honest, can we? Yes. What is it going to take? I don't know. There's still a lot of research and engineering that needs to be done.
Yeah. When you're done building a 33-foot structure, how long until you allow people to move in? I mean, if it takes 28 days to cure everything, do they move in prior to that being fully cured, or do they wait that 28 days? What's the process?
Well, what I could tell you is one thing that is hindering construction speed isn't the 3D printer nor the cure time. It's the other trades. So we have never heard of an instance where, for the most part, they 3D printed it, then the other trades kind of came in the next day. You still have to wait 2-3 weeks, maybe months for those other trades to come in. So it's kind of hard to say. And I think that would have to be up to a city inspector to say, let's just say everything went in perfect and you could get everything on in those 28 days. I think it would be up to the local jurisdiction to say, hey, this family can move in prior to 28 days or prior to 100% of the concrete curing. So I think it's more of a regulatory issue per se.
Okay. And also I want to make a comment here is if anybody has any questions for Vincent, put it in the comments down below and he'll get back to you. I'll make sure he sees it. He'll get back to you. So I'm probably not thinking of all the questions, right? So let's have them down below. But now, how many projects do you guys have going on right now around the U.S.?
Yeah, so around the U.S., we probably have close to 20 to 25 projects going on. Yeah, so that's everything from the first 3D printed pool to, a 10-20 development up in Oregon.
Okay.
We're in Colorado. We just finished the first 2-story home in Texas. So
Okay.
there's projects from East Coast to West Coast.
So you're starting to see this process really start to take a hold because, a
Yeah,
few years ago, there was only a few of these around the country.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one thing, you know, it's one thing. It's what I really try to tell people, and I can say this, on biasly being in the industry is, from a cobot perspective, we're out of a proof of concept stage.
Right.
Are we into a fully commercial where you hit start and you never have to worry about this 3D printer, messing up and you get a home at the end of the day? We're
Right.
not quite just there yet. We're definitely in between. It's still an early industry, but we're out of a lab. If you want to say I want to go print 10 homes in a year, that's a feasible capability to say. There are some limitations depending on how many printers you have, but to say, hey, I want to do 10, 15 homes in my first year, that's an actual realistic outlook.
Okay. Are you seeing it really pick up in commercial as well? I hear you saying it is in residential, but are you seeing commercial people, investors willing to take the risk or what they perceive risk right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely a climb the ladder approach.
Yeah.
Start small and then go work your way up. But from a financial perspective, our customers say commercial projects pay 10x to what the residentials will say. So a lot of people are looking to do, so our customer Perry, they're doing a data center in Germany right now. We have some other customers looking at doing distribution centers for some large other companies. So, if we could, so when it comes to that, one thing we do have to do as a cobot is how do we adapt our technology? So that's why we're creating different printers as well too. So for the most part, what you're going to see is our BOD 2 printer, which is all over the world, but our BOD 3 printer is being launched. We're creating a BOD Infinity printer for large, commercial projects, and then we have our BOD XL. So there's more printers in development to tackle different applications as well.
Have you ever done multiple printers on one site? Do you do that, or you just have one printer on every site?
Yeah, so some of our customers have done 2 printers on the same site. They've done 2 printers for 2 separate buildings. They've never used 2 printers for the same building per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, multiple printers, multiple buildings per se.
Yeah, I would think having 2 working the same property, because I'm picturing a large warehouse
Yeah.
that, you could one to each end, but yeah, I could see where that would be kind of hard to regulate. But
No, absolutely. Like our bot affinity that you could show the video of, it's just a single track system. So that
okay.
track system is just going to do one side of the wall. So there's no reason why you can't have 4 printers going at once doing each corner at a time.
Right. What's the average thickness of the wall on a commercial building? Same as a block
So
wall?
yeah, so you're talking the layer is going to be 2.5 inches by 1.5 inch. So 2.5 inches in width, 1.5 inches in height. That's traditional, but it depends on the application. Like for the wind turbines we do with GE, their print nozzle is probably about a foot long. So they're
Yeah.
printing a foot long and probably a foot in height. So
Yeah.
it really just depends on the application as well too.
Okay. I think this is something that people should be taking a look at. I think with construction costs, labor costs, time is very valuable right now. Labor costs through the roof. So I think this is something that people should take a look at. And I appreciate you coming on today, Vince. In closing, is there anything else that you want to close with?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great culture shift for the community itself. I come from a Mason background. My dad was a Mason contractor.
Okay.
I tried not to go into construction because I saw how brutal of a life it can be, especially on the workers. I'm here in Miami, they're pouring concrete in 100-degree weather. So like I understand from the family perspective what the culture is too. And so this is kind of helping shift a lot because it's bringing my generation into the construction industry because
Yeah.
in all honesty, there is some less labor to it and there's more fame to it. But it's also helping the construction worker. We're not here to take jobs.
Right.
There's more jobs in the industry than we could possibly fill right now. We're just trying to enhance the construction site in general. All we're doing is providing a new tool to make people's life, easier, more practical as well. But I have an automation background. I've seen, Amazon plants, Ford plants, and everything. automation needs to happen. If automation doesn't happen in this industry, or if, costs don't go down, like I said, we're going to see in 10 years paying $1 million for a 1,200 square foot apartment or something like that.
We do that in California already.
Miami's getting that way as well.
It is, isn't it? Well,
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are all great points, Vincent. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to put your contact information down below. We'll throw some video up during this so they can see the process. And, we'll put this video out, probably be a couple weeks from now. So make sure you check it out. Those of you watching, I hope you enjoyed what Vincent had to say. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you could, please give us a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.
Thanks, Joe. Talk to you.